one of the things I've noticed about tonight's presenters, so many creative people, writers, performers, musicians, and people who do it on their own without having, the traditional full-time employer, and that takes a lot of chutzpah. And our next guest, our next presenter, is one of those people. He's been writing professionally for 20 years. He's a native Chicagoan. He's written for Spin, Forbes. His writing has appeared in the Best American Sports Writing Series. He even got to interview Harrison Ford, which, from what I read, probably wasn't the best experience. And he's a Chicago native, and here with the book that changed his life is Joel Reese.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me okay? I'll take that as a yes. Just so you know, everyone, the Cubs are losing 4-3, but it's like the third inning. I don't know if anyone's like DVRing and I just ruined it for you, but there's still a lot of time, so just wanted to... Third inning. Okay, so there's still time. When I was a kid, I had a pretty good idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, I started with fireman, which is right under astronaut on the list of unoriginal first career choices, and then paleontologist, which I gotta tell you, my parents loved trotting that out at dinner parties. Go ahead, Joel, tell them what you want to be when you grow up. Our son, so precocious, paleontologist, I can't even spell it. So, it's cool, Mom, Dad, I've forgiven you, mostly. And then Chicago Cubs, second base, starting for the Cubs. I think that's still a distinct possibility. Still holding out hope for that one. I don't know about that. And then when I was about 7, I discovered words. And I started reading, and I loved words. I loved funny words. I liked saying them. I liked long words. I liked rhyming words. I liked the rhythm of sentences. And I just knew that I wanted to work with words. And, I think the clincher was actually discovering the word onomatopoeia, which is the word that's formed from the sound that it makes, like splat or kapow. And, you remember Mad Magazine, the cartoonist Don Martin? Like, the onomatopoeia was the word that appeared on the page whenever someone got hit in the face with a fish, which always seemed to be happening in Mad Magazine. I've never seen in my life, but, maybe I don't run in the right circles. And the beautiful thing is the adjective for onomatopoeia is onomatopoetic. I'm hooked. I'm in. That's what I want to do. So I started writing, and it seemed like a natural fit. My first work was... 4th grade, my self-titled book about my adventures with Dracula. It was titled My Adventures with Dracula. Perhaps you've heard of it. I kept writing. In high school, I took English, honors English, AP English, although I will cop to this. I wrote about Ayn Rand in my AP exam, so she's the worst. God, she's such a terrible person. I was young. Then I went to college. I was an English major. I had a story in the literary paper, blah, blah, blah. But being a writer, that's what I felt like I was. Capital W. It came to dominate my identity. It's who I was. I was a writer. So then I graduated, and I got in the real world, and I'm like, hey, I contacted some magazines, little kind of off the beaten path magazines like Esquire and Harper's and Vanity Fair. I was like, hey, I got my diploma. I'm available, let's do this. The response was, shall we say, muted. So I tried, scale it back a little bit. I tried local publications, Tribune, Sun-Times, Chicago Magazine. Then really weren't beating my door down. So, then I was like, we'll try the Evanston Review. Didn't happen there. So then I figured, maybe I need to kind of reevaluate things. So I thought, maybe the way you get into writing is through publishing. So I became a proofreader, which I eventually learned that you don't become a writer by being a proofreader. You become a slightly better paid proofreader. So, I didn't know this at the time. I slowly came to learn this. But I was living with 2 friends in the city. We're going out a lot, going to blues bars, playing Frisbee. Not a terrible way to spend your early 20s, but I was not exactly setting the world on fire. So then my lease was up, and my friends left town. I didn't know what to do, so I moved home with my parents. So there I was, working in the basement of a publishing house as a proofreader, not a very good one, living with Mom and Dad, taking care of my old cat, George, rest in peace. 24 years old. So not exactly kicking ass, I guess is how you would summarize my life. So I was looking out at the world, and it was a big, scary place. And I had no idea how to navigate it. Pre-internet, remember that. That changes everything too. But, and the expectations I'd put on myself started to kind of suffocate me. Because I wasn't just someone who wrote, I was a writer, capital W. But I couldn't get there, and I had no idea how to get there. And it dawned on me, maybe I wasn't so good after all. And I was faced with this awful question I had to ask myself. What if the thing I'd always thought about myself, this thing that was so crucial to my identity, was wrong? What if I just wasn't very good? And the idea of being a writer went from being an inspiration to an albatross. And I foundered, and I sank. And right about then is where I discovered Wild Mind by Natalie Goldberg. All right, represent. I like that. I don't know how I found it, but it changed my life. It's basically a book about writing, but it's not about adverbs and prepositions and narrative arc. It doesn't tell you how to hook a reader in the first act and develop a tension through the second act. It's about opening yourself up to letting go. Here's what I mean. Goldberg is a writing teacher and a student of Buddhism. So her book combines Zen philosophy with practical writing tips. Like one of them is keep your hand moving, keep writing. Don't stop and edit while you're writing. Go back and edit afterwards. And that has saved my ass so many times I can't tell you. When I get stuck, I just keep going. So for burgeoning writers out there, do that. She also advised be specific. Don't say car, say orange Cadillac. Don't say the sky was clear, say the sky was impossibly blue. Things like that. She used a simple, elegant voice to explore larger ideas, too, in this book. Loneliness, the concept of home, how to quiet your mind and listen to what's going on inside you. The bottom line was trust yourself, accept that what you have to say is worthwhile. And I use this book religiously. I would write and go back to it and write some more and go back to it. And slowly, I felt like this book freed me from being who I thought I should be and let me become who I was. I know that sounds kind of Phil Jackson-y, but you made it this far. It gave me the courage to move forward. And eventually I set off for a master's program in journalism at the University of Montana. And I moved to Missoula. I hiked in Glacier National Park. I played endless ultimate frisbee. I had my heart broken. I got my degree and I started writing professionally. And the way I see it, that's where my life really began. I know this might not be the best choice. I feel like it should be like an epic, like Love in the Time of Cholera or On the Road, or maybe something whimsical that taught me a profound lesson like Paddington the Bear goes to the market. And I realized that bewildered little moppet in the red hat was me all along. But this book gave me the courage to pursue writing, something I've been doing for close to 25 years now. So clearly something worked out right. And that's where I am now. I am not a paleontologist, but hey, I can spell it, and surely that counts for something.